Today, we are going to cover calories and food choices. So calories, what are they? A calorie is a little bastard that creeps into your room at night and sews all your clothes tighter. And my closets are always infested with the little shits. I thought it was funny. Seriously though, before we dive into the nitty gritty, here are a couple of pictures of foods that contain 200 calories. To the left, you can see fruits and vegetables. And to the right, you can see processed foods, junk foods, and some foods that are higher in fat that are not necessarily higher in food volume. And it just shows you for the different grams and mils, the volume you get of each. So we'll try and keep this as simple as we possibly can. Energy in humans is typically expressed in kilocalories, kcal, but is more often than not and synonymously noted as calories. A calorie is defined as the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Simply put, a calorie is a unit of measurement, but has nothing to do with length or weight. A calorie is actually a unit of energy, and the amount of energy in an item of food or drink is measured in calories. So we consume food, basically, we produce energy via heat. So how do we use this energy? The term calories in refers to the amount of food and drink we consume each day. So if you're taking in calories, you're technically taking in forms of energy. And when our bodies use energy, think of this as calories out. And to the right-hand side, you can see energy in and energy out. Below energy in are your various forms of calories, known as the macronutrients, proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And your energy out being your resting energy expenditure, think sleeping, and your physical activity, which could be both exercise and non-exercise, and the thermic effect of food, which also requires energy. Everything we do day in, day out requires energy. These include day-to-day functions and bodily maintenance. So just going around your day-to-day, in your day-to-day life and staying alive requires energy and fuel. Food digestion and the absorption of nutrients all require energy. Now, food digestion, and we'll get into this in another seminar, like proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, although all burn energy, they all burn different amounts of calories. And daily activities such as walking, jogging, lifting weights, cleaning and gardening, fidgeting, shivering, blinking, standing, smiling, and frowning, and even while you sleep, we are repairing, building, detoxing, and preparing for the days ahead. So here's a quick overview of metabolism. When we humans consume, break down, and absorb food, this is known as metabolism. Metabolism is a collective term used to describe all of these chemical reactions in a biological system. When the molecules of a nutrient undergo oxidation, the bonds that hold the elements together are broken down, and therefore energy is released. So the law of conversion states that energy cannot be converted or destroyed, but can be converted from one form to another. As an example, energy found with food can be converted into energy, permitting us to move. When this occurs, the conversion releases heat energy, why we sweat. Muscles and core temperature of the body can rise by 5 degrees Celsius respectively. Your body is complex, there's no denying that, and there's a lot going on as we move around each day and sleep at night. Our bodies are ingesting, digesting, and absorbing nutrients, packaging and removing toxins and waste products via the liver, skin, lungs, kidneys, and urine feces, building and repairing cells, including the muscles, the bones, the hair, skin, and nails, and protecting us from any viral, fungal, bacterial, or parasitic invasion via the immune system and digestive tract. So we're also producing hormones and chemical reactions as well within the body. Day in, day out, we utilize different types of calories in many different ways. And how do we store those calories? So any calories we consume each day are stored in the muscles, liver, and circulator bloodstream. If you eat more calories than your body can use, you will store the excess calories as fat. So in theory, if you eat less calories than you expend, then the opposite should happen and you should start to lose weight. So at the right-hand side, you can see the scales with calories in, calories out. To the left, you've got food and beverages, and to the right, you've got bodily functions and physical activity. So if you want to lose a little bit of body fat, you might want that scale to shift to the left a little bit, where you're eating just a little bit less food and taking in less beverages, and you're moving a little bit more. If you're trying to maintain your weight, you want the scales to remain the same. If you're trying to build muscle mass, potentially, you want the scales to shift to the right. But is it really that simple? Not really. I mean, there are other factors that we definitely need to consider. How your food is prepped, cooked, and stored can change its nutrient content. So say, for instance, something as simple as you overcooking your food, so it decreases in water content. Technically, the calories would be higher for the weight, if that makes sense. Ingestion, so chewing, digestion, breaking down and absorbing of foods also require energy. Energy burnt at rest, maintaining all your bodily functions and your fat-free mass, which is your resting metabolic rate, your daily physical activities, so PA, and your NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity, including housework, fidgeting, standing, blinking, yawning, and basically anything that doesn't involve meaningful exercise. And believe it or not, incorrect food labeling can also affect how much calories you're taking in. So by as much as even up to 25%. Now, you can't guarantee that every food you consume, even if you're buying the same foods, will contain the same calories at each time. Just like you can't guarantee that when you're on MyFitnessPal that the calories that have been input and the macronutrients and the ratios that have been input are correct also. So you want to have a little bit of wiggle room and don't be overly obsessed by a single calorie here or there. So here are your percentages of daily energy expenditure. So to the left-hand side, you can see a graph. And to the right, we can see resting metabolic rate, RMR, can be between 56 and 80%. So just to stay alive, basically, you're going to burn and expend fuel. The thermic effective food, TEF, can be 10% plus. So if you're consuming 2,000 calories, you'll expend at least 200 calories just breaking down food and absorbing it. Non-exercise activities, that's all the things you're doing out with just being in the gym, for instance, or doing a workout. So that can be 10% plus. And your physical activity, which most people think is the most, is actually the least, between 5 and 10%. Now, your NEAT's the important one. The more you're moving out with your exercise, then the more energy you're going to expend. And that's going to help when that goes towards you having a weight loss goal, for instance, or a fat loss goal. So the more you are moving purposely, then the better that's obviously going to be for your weight loss. So whole foods versus processed foods. Now, when minimally processed foods, whole minimally processed foods are harder to break down, are the hardest to break down, so they will require more energy to process. What this also means is that because they are harder to digest, we may not absorb all of the nutrients due to the time scale within the digestive tract. So imagine your digestive tract like a big conveyor belt, basically, right? So you imagine you've got your conveyor belt with different parts going along it, and then you have the workers around the conveyor belt, basically. All right, so you want to make sure that when you're taking in your food and breaking it down, that you are able to absorb as much of it as you possibly can, basically. But what's going to happen is the food's just not going to sit in your digestive tract forever. All right, this is arguably why we need to keep consuming food regular over time to make sure we're getting different nutrients that are essential for our goals and our purpose, basically, and to maintain all of our bodily functions. So processed foods are easier to break down, meaning you'll extract more calories but burn fewer calories during the digestion process, as most processed foods are typically pre-digested. So two foods that contain roughly the same calories and nutrient ratios could be broken down and absorbed completely differently. So a good example here would be like peanuts versus peanut butter. So you've got whole food in its natural casing, and then peanut butter, which has been processed, so the nutrients are more readily available. Whole fruit versus processed fruit. So whole fruit contains intrinsic sugars. Now they're intrinsic because they're in their casing, basically. So we have to basically break that food down in order to get most of the nutrients. Whereas if you're drinking apple juice, then the apples have been pre-blended, basically. So the sugars are now extrinsic. So a good example, another example would be, in fact, that's enough examples, I think. So both very similar in calories and structure, but both will be taken up very differently. So nutrient density versus calorie density, what's the deal? So nutrient-dense foods are foods that contain a wide variety of nutrients but very few calories. So think vegetables, salads, fruits, potatoes, lean meats. High nutrient density and not necessarily that higher in calories. Again, with meats and that, it can depend on the fat content as well, but they still are nutrient rich. So calorie-dense foods are foods that contain calories but very few nutrients. Think table sugar, fizzy drinks, cakes, and biscuits. So these are potentially, quote unquote, good for energy, but if you're requiring specific nutrients, not so much. So we can use the analogy. I'm going to take my face away for a second. We could use this analogy. Now, if you made £20,000 per year, you couldn't buy a £20,000 car cash. But if you made £100,000 a year, you would sure be able to afford the same car plus have some change left over. So think of this in relation to calories. Your body requires nutrients, and the more nutrient-dense foods you consume each day, the more available nutrients you will have to support all of your bodily functions, right? So once that nutritional quota is met, you don't require nor will you store any additional nutrients. So what does this mean with regards to flexibility, performance, and what actually matters? It means we can then allow a certain degree of flexibility within your diet, as anything extra will be used as an additional fuel source if needed. So basically, if you hit your nutrient target, you can be flexible, and you want to make sure that you are meeting your nutrient target first before you do so. So you'll not get a gold star for consuming additional vitamins and minerals. And unbelievably, your body has no idea the difference between ice cream or sweet potato. Once each food is broken down, your body will then take what it can and dispose of the rest. So once you overconsume in vitamins and minerals, your body will just secrete what it doesn't require, basically. So if you underconsume calories or eat foods that are lacking nutrients over time, this will affect your performance and bodily functions, including hormone regulation, immunity, digestion, brain function, cell regeneration, and the repairing of muscles, organs, bones, hair, skin, and nails. You will be able to survive on calories, but eventually you're going to need to make sure that you're getting the right amount of nutrients for all of your bodily functions. So when dieting, calories and food choices do matter if the goal is sustainable long-term fat loss. So can certain foods make you gain or lose fat? If we keep it simple, you cannot gain fat in a calorie deficit and you cannot lose fat in a calorie surplus. If you are, you're either not training as much, potentially moving slower, underreporting, maybe stressed and holding water a little bit. Female, it could be your menstrual cycle. So there's lots of different reasons for you potentially maybe holding on to your weight. What I would say though is because you are in a calorie deficit, it's important to make sure that you're getting a lot of nutrient-dense foods in that are packed full of vitamins and minerals and the essential nutrients you require to survive and thrive. Otherwise, it's going to be harder for you to diet and it's probably not going to be as sustainable for you long-term. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment on this video, or you can send me a private message or an email anytime.